Look at me, and don't look away. I'm the mother whose own child turned love into a leash. She hid my pills, sold my name, and mortgaged the house my husband built, with my forged signature. When I coughed, she called it embarrassing. When I begged for dignity, she called it business. I believed her until the bank letters arrived with my address listed as collateral. If you think, not my kid, listen close. This is how control dresses up as care, and how I chose handcuffs for my daughter over a grave for myself. I balanced the cake like it was a newborn, chocolate layers, buttercream roses, the way I've made it since Kaylee turned 10. 68 years old, a tremor in my left hand, and still proud of my frosting. Mom, please don't cough while my guests are here. It's embarrassing. She said it lightly, like teasing. Laughter skittered across my kitchen in Pittsburgh, where the marigolds from the back porch glow in the window at sunset. Kaylee poured champagne, clinked flutes, and with one polished finger nudged my oxygen tank behind the island like it was a rogue trash bin. Everyone, this is my mom, she sang. Stubborn as a mule, still refuses assisted living. More laughter. Someone whispered, "Ah." I felt the "ah" like a pat on the head. I set the cake down. My hand shook. "Make a wish," I said. My voice came out thinner than thread. Kaylee leaned toward her candles, diamonds flashing. "Wish Mom would listen," she joked, and blew. Smoke rose. The room cheered. I stared through the haze and thought of my husband's hands sanding this very counter, of little Kaylee drawing hearts on the fogged window. I swallowed the cough. The words landed anyway, harder than any fall. When Frank passed, the house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I'd wake in the night and swear I still heard his slippers dragging toward the kitchen, the faint clink of his teacup. To silence the ache, I filled the air with little rituals, polishing the railings he built, tending to the marigolds that always leaned toward his old workbench window, baking on Sundays because the smell of cinnamon felt like home. The neighbors said I was brave, but it wasn't bravery. It was habit. It was survival. Kaylee used to help me water those marigolds. She'd wear her little pink rain boots, the ones with the duck faces, and insist every flower needed its own drink. Sometimes she'd press her small hand into the dirt and say she was planting a heart seed. She told me hearts grow better when you talk to them nicely. I suppose that's true for people, too. But somewhere between college, her first promotion, and the glossy new life she built downtown, my daughter stopped talking nicely. Now she drives her Lexus down our old street with the windows rolled up tight, music thumping, like she can't risk the past blowing in. She steps out in heels too high for these cracked sidewalks, the air around her smelling of perfume that costs more than my monthly gas bill. She hugs me, quick, one-armed, then looks around as though the house might stain her clothes. "Mom, you really need to redo the porch," she says. "It's embarrassing. Everyone's updating their exteriors. This looks neglected." Neglected. That word hits me harder than she means it to. I still sweep the steps every morning. I still line the railing with flower pots. But I don't argue. I just nod and say, "I'll think about it." The truth is, I don't want to think about it. This house is full of us, our laughter, our fights, our Christmases, the smell of Frank's pipe smoke that still hides in the curtains. You don't replace walls like that with drywall and paint. Kaylee doesn't see it, or maybe she refuses to. She comes every Thursday now, always in a rush. She'll toss a bag of groceries onto the counter, half of it things I don't eat, like kale chips or oat milk, and say, "I didn't have time to check what you needed, just get what you can from this." Then she opens the windows wide. "It smells like medicine in here," she says, frowning. "You need more ventilation." I laugh it off, but it stings. The smell is my ointments, the eucalyptus rub for my joints, the pill bottles I try to hide when she visits. She doesn't ask how I'm feeling, not really. She only asks what I've done, as though my worth now depends on productivity, not presence. The last time she came, she brought her boyfriend, Evan, a real estate developer with perfect teeth and the smile of someone who's never known hunger or fear. He shook my hand, too firmly, and looked around like he was already drawing blueprints in his head. "You've got a goldmine here," he said, gesturing at the living room. "These vintage touches, people pay a fortune for that reclaimed look now." Kaylee laughed and touched his arm. I keep telling her that. But she won't budge. She thinks this place has sentimental value. She said, sentimental, the way people say, disease. I poured them tea. My hands trembled slightly when I set the cups down, but I smiled through it. It's not just a house, I said softly. It's our home. Evan smiled, that polite, dismissive smile. Of course it is. But think about your future. Assisted living, maybe a nice condo, no maintenance, no stairs. Safer for someone your age. Someone my age, I repeated, the words sticking like peanut butter. Kaylee rolled her eyes. Mom, he's just looking out for you. I didn't answer. I watched the steam curl from my cup and thought how it looked like the ghosts of all the dinners I'd cooked for her, spaghetti nights, birthday cakes, late-night cocoa after nightmares. Every bit of warmth I'd poured into her had floated away, like that steam. She came again the following week, this time alone. She stood in the doorway, her heels clicking on the tile, and said, I got an offer from someone interested in the property. All cash. You could live comfortably for years. I laughed then, a thin, tired laugh. Comfortably? I already do, sweetheart. Mom, don't be stubborn. The market's hot. You're sitting on an investment, not a memory. That one cut deep. I wanted to tell her that this house is my memory, that every creak in the floorboards is Frank's laugh, every smudge on the wall is a piece of her childhood. But I didn't, because she wouldn't understand. She looked around again, exhaled dramatically, then reached for her phone. At least let me schedule an appraisal, she said. No, I told her, more firmly this time. I'm not selling. The air went still. She stared at me for a long moment, her lips tight, then sighed. You're impossible, she muttered, and left. That night, I sat at the kitchen table alone, the marigolds glowing orange through the window, and felt something shift inside me, a quiet realization. My daughter, my baby girl who used to draw hearts on glass and giggle when her dad carried her on his shoulders, now looked at me like a burden. And yet, even knowing that, I still waited for her next visit. Because hope is a habit you can't unlearn, even when it hurts. When she finally did come, 2 weeks later, she brought a new handbag and a sharper tone. I can't keep explaining to people why you're still here, she said. It makes me look heartless. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to explain me to anyone, that a daughter's love shouldn't need justification. But my tongue felt heavy, my chest tight. Instead, I smiled the way old women do when they've already been defeated. Don't worry, honey, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. And I meant it, though I didn't yet realize how much she would try to prove me wrong. It started with the dizzy spell. I was rinsing a cup when the kitchen tiles tilted like a trapdoor and my right hand forgot its job. The cup slipped, shattered, and I sat down hard, breath scraping the inside of my ribs. The doctor called it a mild event, a warning. Pills were added, salt was subtracted, and I was told to take it easy, as if ease were something you could lift off a shelf. Kaylee arrived with a tote bag and a tone. We're streamlining, she said, flipping open her laptop. You don't need to worry about bills anymore. I'll put everything on autopay. One less thing for your brain. I wanted to say my brain had paid bills since before she was born. Instead I said, thank you, honey, and watched her hands move like scissors, snipping, redirecting, consolidating. She asked for my passwords with the same patience you use on a child tying laces. When I hesitated, she sighed. Mom, I'm trying to help. She ordered a new credit card, with rewards, and kept the old one, for emergencies. The pension portal, the checking account, the phone plan, just easier if everything runs through me, she said. The phrase became a lullaby she sang while I signed things I couldn't read fast enough. The fall in the bathroom came next. I turned too quickly, my knee buckled, and the world shot white. Kaylee found me bruised and furious at my own bones. She tsked, brought a shower chair, and moved my shampoo to a low shelf without asking. See? It's not so hard, she said, like we were rearranging a closet, not my dignity. In public, her voice grew sharper. At the diner on Liberty Avenue, I reached for a slice of pie I'd been craving all week. The waitress smiled, pen poised. Kaylee covered the menu with her palm. No dessert, Mom. Your numbers were bad. The waitress blinked, my face went hot, and I heard myself say, water's fine. That pie walked by on someone else's plate, leaving a sweet smell and a bitter aftertaste. At Mass, she adjusted my scarf and whispered, this sweater? It pills. You look unkempt. Her eyes dragged over me like Velcro. I thought of all the mornings I'd ironed her school blouses till my wrists ached. After service, she posted a photo of us, her flawless, me blurred, and captioned it, "Sunday with my favorite girl." #grateful #caregiver life. Strangers sent hearts. I sent none. The pharmacist started recognizing her before me. "For Mom?" he'd ask, and she'd sign with a signature that looked too practiced. When I tried to ask a question, "Does this blue pill go with the white?" she cut in. "She gets confused after noon," she said lightly. My mouth opened and closed. I wasn't a fish gasping, I wanted to say. I was a woman still here. Her upgrades multiplied like fruit flies. A sleeker SUV. A watch that counted her steps and, I suspected, mine. Miami appeared on her phone in filtered blues, pool edges, champagne, her legs on a lounge chair with the caption, "Finally recharging." #boss life. I stared at the photo and counted the empty spaces it didn't show. My sink full of dishes, the ache in my shoulder, the quiet that tugged at my sleeve. "Boundaries," my friend Celia from church said gently over the phone. "You need boundaries. I have rails on the stairs," I joked. "Is that the same?" The week after, Kaylee brought a stack of forms. "This is just a simple power of attorney," she said, sliding a pen toward me. "In case anything happens." "In case?" I asked. "Mom." She pressed the pen into my hand. "Do you want to make me the bad guy when the utilities get cut because you forgot to pay?" The utilities had never been cut. But my memory, already a little moth-chewed, doubted itself. I signed. She gathered the pages quickly, like a dealer collecting cards after a losing hand. She began scheduling my appointments herself. I learned about them when my phone chimed. "Neurology, Wednesday at 2. Don't eat," the text said. It didn't ask if I had plans, if I felt up to it, if I preferred Thursday mornings when my stiffness eases after warm sun on the porch. At the clinic, she answered the doctor's questions in the plural. "We're doing okay," she said. "We've been tired." I sat 3 feet away and grew invisible. She installed a door camera, for safety, and a tracker in my keychain. "You lose things," she said. I found a small silver disc taped inside my purse. "So I don't lose you." It was meant as a joke. It sounded like a bell on a cat's collar. Money grew abstract. I stopped seeing statements. When I asked if the property taxes were paid, she waved a glossy manicure. "Autopay." I tried to buy groceries and my card chirped decline. "Fraud protection," she said, confiscating it tenderly. "Use the store app I set up." The app welcomed me cheerily, then told me my budget was reached. She curated my closet. "This is dated. This is depressing. This is a tripping hazard," she said, tossing sweaters and skirts into a donation bag. I rescued Frank's flannel from the pile when she wasn't looking and tucked it under my pillow like a secret. Sometimes she softened, and those moments were worse. She'd brush my hair back, kiss my forehead, and whisper, "You'd be lost without me." I wanted to argue. Instead, I remembered the bathroom floor, the split second of helplessness, and said nothing. Silence is cheaper than a fight. Out with neighbors, she performed her care like a dance. "Mom, your cane," she'd prompt, handing it to me before I'd stood up. "She forgets," she stage whispered, and Mrs. Larkin gave me that tilted head pity I hate. I did not forget. But a person begins to wonder, if everyone says you're fading, whether you're already a watercolor left in the rain. At night, the house creaked the way old houses do, and I lay awake listening, making mental lists to prove I could. Thursday. Water Marigolds, call insurance about the dental claim, defrost soup. I held the list in my head like a candle in a power outage, a small, stubborn light. One morning, I found my father's toolbox gone from the basement shelf. "Oh," Kaylee said brightly, "I sold that. Vintage market, Mom. You can't lift those anyway." "It wasn't about lifting," I said, hearing my voice go small. "It was his." She kissed my cheek like she was excusing a child's tantrum. "You're sentimental." "I am. I'm also not stupid." I began stashing cash in the flour canister, notes in the hymn book, names and dates on a folded index card inside my shoe. It felt ridiculous and necessary at once, like wearing armor to bed. Sometimes, when she left, the air would settle back into itself and I'd stand in the quiet, touching the edge of the counter Frank sanded smooth, grounding myself in wood and weight. I told my friends she was under pressure. I told the mirror I was fine. I smiled through the bruises her words left, then traced them with my fingertips the way you trace old scars, to remind yourself where you end and the world begins. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of gray Pittsburgh day where the air smells like metal and memory. The mailman, young and apologetic, handed me a thick stack of envelopes. "All yours, Mrs. Grant," he said, though the name said otherwise, Kaylee Grant, printed neatly on every one. Same address, my house. At first I thought it was a mix-up. Kaylee used my address for packages sometimes. She said it was safer than leaving them in her condo's lobby. But these weren't packages, they were letters from banks, financial offices, one even from a lending firm I'd never heard of. I sat at the kitchen table, sunlight filtering weakly through the lace curtain, and sorted through them. The marigolds outside nodded in the breeze, innocent witnesses. One envelope was already half open at the corner, and my trembling fingers did the rest. The words inside blurred at first, so much small print, so many numbers, but then my eyes locked on a phrase that snapped the world into cruel focus. Primary property used as collateral, 218 Maplewood Drive, *. My house, my home, the place Frank and I built with weekend labor and late-night laughter. The deed was in * my name. For a moment, everything went soundless, like being underwater. Then the blood rushed in my ears. I could hear my heart pounding, could feel my breath shortening. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles blanched. She was using my home, my security, my last piece of freedom, to borrow money. The room tilted, the marigolds blurred. I pressed my palm against my chest and counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, just breathe, Ruth. By evening, I'd convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe she'd intended to tell me. I warmed up soup and waited for her car to pull into the driveway. When I heard the crunch of tires on gravel, relief and dread collided in my chest. She breezed in, phone in hand, talking fast. "Yes, Evan, the wire transfer cleared." "No, I'll sign it tomorrow." "Hold on, Mom's glaring at me." She laughed into the phone, gave me a quick peck on the cheek, and tossed her purse on the counter. "Kaylee," I said quietly. "What's this about a mortgage?" Her fingers froze mid-scroll. She looked up, eyes narrowing just slightly. "What mortgage?" I slid the letter across the counter. "This. It came today." For a heartbeat, she was still. Then she sighed, long and theatrical, and rolled her eyes. "Oh, that. It's just paperwork. I needed capital for a business deal. Temporary. You wouldn't even notice. My house is on it," I whispered. "So? You live here. It's not like I'm selling it." She sat down, speared a bite of salad from the takeout container she'd brought. "Don't make a big deal, Mom. You don't understand how business works." My throat closed. "You forged my name?" Her fork clattered against the bowl. "God, you're so dramatic. It's not like that. You should be grateful I'm managing things. Do you have any idea what your property taxes cost? I'm keeping everything afloat." I stared at her, at the daughter I'd raised to say please and thank you, the little girl who once kissed my cheek with jam-sticky lips and promised, "I'll take care of you when I'm big." "You'll be gone in a few years anyway," she added, her voice flat, as if she were reading off a grocery list. "Why not let your assets actually do something while you're here?" I didn't feel the spoon fall from my hand, but I heard it hit the tile. The sound echoed through the room. Her words didn't come like a slap, they came like a blade. Cold, surgical. She didn't even notice the wound she'd made. I couldn't eat, couldn't speak. I just sat there, listening to her phone ding with another message, while she hummed and talked about closing deals and leveraging equity. When she finally left, I locked the door behind her and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My reflection in the glass panel looked foreign, older, smaller, the kind of woman people talk over. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Frank's old recliner, the one that still smelled faintly of tobacco and aftershave, and watched the clock hands crawl. Every so often I'd whisper aloud, "She didn't mean it." But the lie grew heavier each time. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I pulled out the old tin box from the hall closet, the one labeled important papers. Inside were deeds, insurance statements, tax returns, and a photograph of Frank smiling beside our first mailbox. I gathered everything into a folder. At 9 sharp, I called Mr. O'Neill our family accountant. He'd handled Frank's pension for decades. His voice was the same steady rumble it had always been. Mrs. Grant? What's the matter? I told him. The words came out cracked, uneven, like a confession. When I said, she used my house, my voice trembled. He was quiet for a long time. I could hear him breathing, could hear the soft tap of his pen against the desk. Then he said, bring me every document you have. Don't tell her yet. His tone left no room for comfort, just truth. So I did as he said. I spent the morning gathering papers, slipping them into an old manila envelope. My hands shook so badly that I dropped the stapler twice. Before I left, I looked around the house, the lace curtains, the marigolds, Frank's photo on the mantel. Don't worry, I whispered to him. I'll protect it. I'll protect us. The taxi driver asked if I was visiting family. Something like that, I said. When I reached Mr. O'Neill's office downtown, the receptionist offered coffee. I declined. My stomach was a knot. He met me at the door himself, gray hair neatly combed, concern softening his usually unreadable face. Let's see what we're dealing with, he said, guiding me to his desk. I handed over the envelope. As he flipped through the papers, his brows drew tighter, his mouth a thin line. When he finally looked up, his eyes were kind but grave. Mrs. Grant, he said quietly, I think your daughter has done more than just borrow against the house. My fingers went cold around the edge of the chair. What do you mean? I whispered. I mean, he said slowly, there's a pattern here, transfers, withdrawals, forged signatures. We may need to involve someone else. I wanted to cry, to scream, to undo it all. Instead, I sat straighter. Who? He picked up the phone. Detective Collins, he said. He handles elder financial abuse. The word abuse hung in the air like a gavel strike. And that was the moment I understood, this wasn't just betrayal. It was a crime, one signed in my own name. Mr. O'Neill didn't waste words. He made a neat pile of my documents, slid them into a folder, and picked up the phone. Collins? It's O'Neill. I've got a case you'll want. 10 minutes later, a tall man with windburned cheeks and a tie that had seen too many coffees walked in, carrying a spiral notebook and a gentleness that surprised me. I'm Detective Collins, he said, shaking my hand like I wasn't fragile. Why don't you tell me what you told him? So I did. I told him about the mail, the mortgage, the way Kaylee said I'd be gone in a few years. The words sounded different in that office, more solid, like laying bricks. He didn't flinch, just scribbled and nodded. He asked to see my signature. I wrote it on a yellow sticky note. He compared it to the copies from the bank letters, tracing the loops with his pen. Same name, he murmured, different bones. Then he looked at me and said, softly but without pity, you're not the first. Daughters, sons, there's always a reason they tell themselves. They call it helping. It's theft. The word sat between us like a weight. I looked at my hands. Veins like little rivers, a white scar on the knuckle from a Thanksgiving knife slip, and I felt them shake. When he slid the report across the desk, I signed it. My name landed crooked. I did not apologize. Next step, Collins said. We collect proof. He laid out the plan with the calm of someone who has done this before. They'd request records from the bank, check the pension portal login history, and track transfers. He asked if I had life insurance proceeds after Frank died. I nodded. There's a deposit missing, Mr. O'Neill added, already scrolling through statements. He tilted the screen toward Collins. See this? And then this investment fund, in Kaylee's name. The room hummed with printers and low voices. My stomach hummed with dread. I'd raised a thief, or a person willing to step over me as if I were a rug. I did not know which felt worse. They wired my phone. That's the phrase Collins used, but it was really an app, tucked into the settings like a small, watchful eye. It records live when you press this, he said, tapping a discrete icon. Keep your phone on you. Don't tip your hand. Act normal. Normal, I repeated, tasting how foreign the word had become. He gave me a tiny recorder, too, no bigger than a cough drop. Insurance, he said. People get flustered. Phones fail. He showed me how to slide the switch with my thumb, how to check the red blink. You're doing something brave, he added, catching the tremor in my mouth. I'm doing something late, I said. He shook his head. You're doing it now. I walked home with the recorder in my pocket and the odd sensation that the sidewalk had lengthened. The marigolds were waiting, bright and ridiculous. I watered them first, because I needed to perform a small kindness before I performed a hard one. Sunday came with that church bell stillness. I baked scones, the way Kaylee likes them, orange zest, a glaze that cracks when you tap it. I wanted the scene to look like love, so the betrayal inside it would be visible to someone who wasn't me. She arrived in beige cashmere and sunglasses, the uniform of a woman with a schedule. "Smells good," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. She didn't notice my hands under the table, feeling for the recorder. I slid the switch. The red blink was a heartbeat. "Coffee?" I asked brightly. "I got that blend you like." "Sure." She perched on a stool, scrolled her phone, and sighed theatrically. "God, this week." "I'm sorry," I said, placing the cup where the mic could hear. "It's fine. There's a refinancing window and Evan says we have to move now." She took a sip, winced at the heat, and then smiled that smile she uses on waiters. "Actually, that reminds me. I brought something I need you to sign." Routine. There it was, her voice dipped in honey. I felt my breath steady in a way that felt like betrayal of a different kind, betrayal of the part of me that still wanted to forgive. "Sign what, darling?" I asked, careful to keep my tone soft, curious, not cornered. She pulled a manila folder from her bag, slid a few pages out, and angled them so the lines faced me but the fine print faced her. "It's just to streamline the mortgage company. They get jumpy about seniors." A laugh. Don't worry," I repeated, and my thumb pressed a second time under the table, just to be sure. The phone listened. The recorder listened. Maybe God listened, too. She handed me a pen. "Here, initials on the flags. Full signature at the bottom." I read slowly, a performance she hated. Her foot began to jiggle. "Mom," she said lightly, "we don't have all day." "Tell me again what it's for?" I asked, head tilted like a woman being taught a new recipe. "I want to understand." She launched into a practiced explanation: equity, cash flow, short-term leverage, words that sounded like furniture dragged across a floor. "The property stays in your name," she said. "This just lets me manage draws. You'll never notice. You're good at managing things," I said. My voice didn't crack. I was proud of that. She beamed. "Exactly. And the life insurance?" I added, casual as steam. "Did that go into the mortgage company, too?" A half-second pause. "Temporarily," she said, and waved her hand. "It's all flowing through the investment vehicle. Higher yield, less tax. Evan set it up. Under your name?" Another pause, thinner this time. "For simplicity." "Of course," I said, and smiled like a woman who has surrendered. I signed the first line. My hand shook, and the pen made a tiny spatter. "Oh dear," I murmured. "I'm clumsy lately." She covered my hand with hers. "You'd be lost without me," she said, the same lullaby she'd used a dozen times. Into the air, into the mic, into the future where her words would sit in a transcript like small knives. We ate scones. She complimented the glaze. She told me my scarf was cute, in a vintage way, which is the kindest insult she knows. When she left her mug half full, I wrapped it in a napkin and tucked it into a bag with the signed paper she thought she was stealing clean. At the door she turned, all brightness. "Love you, Mom." "I love you," I said. It was true, and it hurt. After the door latched, I sat down, pressed the stop button, and exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. I called Collins from the landline, because that old plastic handset made me feel grounded. "We got it," I said. Her words. "The papers." "Good," he said. "Hold tight. We'll meet tomorrow. Bring everything." I set the phone down, wiped the crumbs into my palm, and carried the evidence to the tin box in the hall closet. My heart thudded hard enough that I had to sit on the edge of the bed with both feet planted, like bracing for a wave. In the quiet, the house breathed around me. Frank's photo on the dresser caught a strip of afternoon sun, and for a foolish moment I asked it aloud, "Did you hear?" The light didn't answer. But the recorder did, when I played it back, every word, every laugh, every false reassurance. Captured, at last, like a moth in a jar. They waited at the corner where the lilacs taper into the alley, two cruisers idling so quietly I could hear the leaves stir. Kaylee kissed my cheek, light as perfume, slid the manila folder into her purse, and clicked down the steps. My oxygen tank hummed beside me like a tired insect. I lifted the lace curtain with 2 fingers and watched my girl walk toward the trap I'd baited with my own name. She didn't see the first car until the blue lit her windshield. Brakes squealed. Doors opened. The flashers painted my garden the color of alarm. Blue on the marigolds, blue on Frank's birdbath, blue on the paint I still haven't touched up on the porch rail. For a second, the scene looked like a stage and everyone else knew their lines. I stood behind glass, barefoot on the runner, a woman who had finally shouted into a hurricane and was hearing her voice come back. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle." Calm, practiced. She did not move at first. Then the door swung wide, and I heard her before I saw her. "Mom," the cry high and tearing, the sound of a child who has skinned her knee. The officers took her elbows as if they belonged to them. She twisted, eyes wild, mascara brave but already cracking. "Mom, you set me up? You can't do this." I pressed my palm to the window, the way I used to when she got on the school bus, pretending my hand could keep her safe through glass. "You did this," I whispered, "not cruel, just true." The words fogged the pain and vanished. A neighbor's screen door banged. Mr. Larkin stepped onto his stoop, then retreated when he recognized the shape of shame. Sirens lowered to a steady pulse. Paperwork was exchanged, a purse lifted, the folder extracted like evidence from a nest. Kaylee saw the edge of it, saw the officers slip the pages into a clear bag, and something in her face went from outrage to calculation. That was the part that broke me, the pivot, the practiced pivot. She knew the steps to this dance. The cuffs clicked. Her mouth kept moving. I couldn't hear the words anymore, only the shape of them, mom and why and please and no. I thought of her first tooth, her first recital, the fever that scared us both at 3 in the morning. Love is a long ledger of tiny rescues. Today I didn't rush in with ice chips or a damp cloth. I stood in my kitchen and let the officers drive my daughter away. When the lights faded, the garden melted back into its ordinary colors. The house was quiet enough to hear the clock tick. I sat at the table without meaning to and stared at the indentations the folder had left on the table runner. I thought, this is how a life shows its weight, creases in fabric, a ring of coffee, a chair shoved back too quickly. The phone rang. I jumped like I'd been caught. "Mrs. Grant?" Collins. His voice had the steadiness of a harbor. "We've got enough. Forgery, financial exploitation, identity theft. You're safe now." Safe. The word landed on the table and slid to the floor. I pictured safety as a quilt you pull up to your chin. All I felt was skin in cold air. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded like somebody else's, flat and older. "What happens next?" "She'll be processed. There will be an arraignment tomorrow. We'll walk you through it." He paused. "You did the right thing." I thought of the night I brought Kaylee home from the hospital and fell asleep sitting up, my hand on her tiny chest to feel it rise. Did I do the right thing then? Did I do the right thing now? Both answers tasted like salt. I couldn't find the word. "Hollow," he offered. I closed my eyes. "Yes. Justice isn't comfort," he said gently. "It's structure. Comfort comes later, with time and good people." After we hung up, I stood, because sitting felt like sinking. I washed the 2 cups, scrubbed the rim of hers twice, then set them upside down to dry. The tank sighed when I moved. I refilled the watering can and poured a slow circle around each marigold. The soil drank like it had been waiting. My hands remembered, tilt, pour, pause, move. Old prayers. Celia called. "Ruth, are you okay?" We saw the lights. "I'm here," I said. The words surprised me. Here felt like an accomplishment. They took her. "Oh, honey." A soft exhale. "Do you want me to come over?" No. I did, but I couldn't carry another witness right then. "Tomorrow, maybe." We spoke about nothing for a few minutes, her pot roast, the church raffle, the rain the weatherman keeps promising. When we hung up, the quiet came back like a tide. I went to the hall closet and opened the tin box. The recorder lay where I'd placed it, innocent as a candy. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room. "You'd be lost without me." I pressed stop and slid the device beneath the deeds, as if paper could muffle memory. Twilight sifted in. I turned on the lamp Frank hated because it made the room look jaundiced, and I laughed once, a bark, at the uselessness of that thought. I made myself a small dinner I didn't want and ate it slowly, because discipline is a kind of faith. A moth tapped the shade, desperate for the wrong light. When I carried my plate to the sink, my knee wobbled. I caught the counter. Easy, I told the air, and the air obeyed. I moved through the house checking locks, touching frames, writing a book on the shelf. Rituals stitched the evening together, thin but strong. In bed, the ceiling fan made it small weather. I lay flat and watched the shadows turn. I tried not to picture Kaylee in a holding cell, jewelry in a bag, her sweater traded for something shapeless. I tried not to picture myself at the hearing, my signature enlarged on a screen, strangers studying the loop of my G like a map to guilt. I prayed, not for mercy or punishment, but for clarity, what to say, how to stand, where to put the sorrow so it wouldn't drown the room. Somewhere after midnight, my body gave me an hour. I dreamed of the house as a boat, all the doors were hatches and I was finally above water, mouth open to sweet air. When I woke, the taste stayed, a ghost of oxygen on my tongue. I got up before dawn and made tea. The sky went from coal to slate to the faintest tin. Marigolds don't care about court dates. They opened exactly on time, sure of their one job. I stood in the doorway with my mug and let the steam soften my face. I was not safe. I was not brave. I was a mother who had chosen a lock over a lullaby. The kettle clicked as it cooled, a small, definite sound. Somewhere downtown, paper learned my daughter's name in a new tense. Justice had knocked. It had not entered with flowers. It had left the door ajar, and cold morning came through. I wrapped my robe tighter and whispered to the house, "We're still here." The silence answered back, not with comfort, but with space, room enough, at last, to breathe. A year can feel like an entire lifetime when you start it from zero. The first few months after the trial, I moved through the house like a guest. Every creak made me jump, every letter in the mailbox made my pulse stutter. I'd walk past her old bedroom and catch myself waiting for the sound of her heels on the stairs, that familiar rhythm of command. But the only sound now was the kettle, the radio, and sometimes, my own voice learning how to talk to itself without apology. Spring came stubbornly that year. The snow melted into gray slush that clung to the porch until I decided to change it. I called a young man from church, paid him to paint it a color I'd always wanted but never dared, soft blue, like the sky on good days. When it dried, the whole house looked as if it had taken a deep breath. I still go to group therapy at Allegheny General Hospital every Wednesday. The sign on the door says survivors of family abuse. The first time I walked in, my cane clicked too loudly on the linoleum. I felt out of place among strangers whose stories sounded like mine but worse, or maybe just different. When they said their names, I whispered mine. When they cried, I folded tissues for them because my tears were still locked somewhere behind my ribs. By the fifth meeting, a woman named Nora brought coffee and said, "You always listen so carefully." That was the first compliment I'd believed in years. Now, I help new members fill out elder protection forms, explain what power of attorney really means, where to call if a loved one turns predator. Every time I hand someone a pen, I remember the day I signed my own name into danger, and how that same name later became my rescue. Kaylee is serving time in a minimum security facility outside Harrisburg. 16 months for forgery and financial exploitation. The sentence sounded light when I first heard it, but time has a different weight when it belongs to your child. She sends letters, neat handwriting, still scented faintly with the perfume she used to wear. I keep them in the top drawer of my dresser, bound with a rubber band. I haven't opened them yet. Maybe someday I will. Maybe forgiveness will arrive folded between those pages. But trust? No. Trust died quietly the night she said I'd be gone in a few years. Life didn't stop, though. The house demanded living. I planted marigolds again this spring, bright orange, same as always, but this time I mixed in new soil, let the roots breathe deeper. They've spread wider than before, defiant little suns lining the walkway. Every time I water them, I feel a small, clean strength rise from the earth into my palms. The neighbors have returned too. Mrs. Larkin brings shortbread on Fridays, and we sit on the new blue porch talking about nothing important, her grandson's graduation, the potholes on Maplewood Drive, the church raffle. Once she said, "You're looking better, Mrs. Grant. Lighter." And I told her the truth. That's because peace weighs less than fear. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings, I read the paper by the window where Kaylee once drew hearts on the fogged glass. I still see them there, faint outlines under the dust. I don't wipe them away. They remind me that love, even when it breaks you, leaves proof that it existed. I've learned to measure my days differently now, not by who visits or who doesn't, but by what still blooms. I make my own tea, pay my own bills, and walk to the market when the weather behaves. Every ordinary task feels like a declaration: I am still here. Last week, Celia from therapy asked if I'd ever consider moving closer to her daughter in Philadelphia. I smiled and said, no. My roots are here. She laughed, thinking I meant the Marigolds. Maybe I did. Maybe I meant the memories, too, the ones that hurt, the ones that heal. Before bed, I sometimes sit in the dark and let the oxygen machine hum beside me, steady as a lullaby. I picture Kaylee somewhere under a different sky, counting her own days. I hope she's learning something gentler than ambition. I hope she's remembering the smell of orange zest scones and the sound of her mother's laughter before the world hardened her heart. In me, I've learned that surviving isn't about winning, it's about staying soft in a world that tried to turn you brittle. Every morning I open the curtains, breathe in, and thank the house for standing with me through everything. The porch gleams, the marigolds glow, and for the first time in years, I don't look over my shoulder. Because peace doesn't make noise. It just sits beside you, warm as sunlight on your hands, whispering, you made it home. I know this story isn't easy to hear. But maybe someone watching is living inside that same silence I once did. You tell yourself, she's just tired, or he didn't mean it. I told myself that too, until I was left without money, without respect, almost without myself. When love turns into control, it's no longer care, it's a cage. And the longer you stay silent, the tighter it closes around you. I finally spoke, late, but in time. And now I want you to speak too. Don't wait until someone signs your life away while calling it love. What about you? Did you recognize someone in this story? If you did, don't stay quiet. Share, subscribe, tell me you hear me. Because silence is their power. But your voice is your rescue. Before bed, I sometimes sit in the dark and let the oxygen machine hum beside me, steady as a lullaby. I picture Kaylee somewhere under a different sky, counting her own days. I hope she's learning something gentler than ambition. I hope she's remembering the smell of orange zest scones and the sound of her mother's laughter before the world hardened her heart. In me, I've learned that surviving isn't about winning, it's about staying soft in a world that tried to turn you brittle. Every morning I open the curtains, breathe in, and thank the house for standing with me through everything. The porch gleams, the marigolds glow, and for the first time in years, I don't look over my shoulder. Because peace doesn't make noise. It just sits beside you, warm as sunlight on your hands, whispering, you made it home. I know this story isn't easy to hear. But maybe someone watching is living inside that same silence I once did. You tell yourself, she's just tired, or he didn't mean it. I told myself that too, until I was left without money, without respect, almost without myself. When love turns into control, it's no longer care, it's a cage. And the longer you stay silent, the tighter it closes around you. I finally spoke, late, but in time. And now I want you to speak too. Don't wait until someone signs your life away while calling it love. What about you? Did you recognize someone in this story? If you did, don't stay quiet. Share, subscribe, tell me you hear me. Because silence is their power. But your voice is your rescue. Before bed, I sometimes sit in the dark and let the oxygen machine hum beside me, steady as a lullaby. I picture Kaylee somewhere under a different sky, counting her own days. I hope she's learning something gentler than ambition. I hope she's remembering the smell of orange zest scones and the sound of her mother's laughter before the world hardened her heart. In me, I've learned that surviving isn't about winning, it's about staying soft in a world that tried to turn you brittle. Every morning I open the curtains, breathe in, and thank the house for standing with me through everything. The porch gleams, the marigolds glow, and for the first time in years, I don't look over my shoulder. Because peace doesn't make noise. It just sits beside you, warm as sunlight on your hands, whispering, you made it home. I know this story isn't easy to hear. But maybe someone watching is living inside that same silence I once did. You tell yourself, she's just tired, or he didn't mean it. I told myself that too, until I was left without money, without respect, almost without myself. When love turns into control, it's no longer care, it's a cage. And the longer you stay silent, the tighter it closes around you. I finally spoke, late, but in time. And now I want you to speak too. Don't wait until someone signs your life away while calling it love. What about you? Did you recognize someone in this story? If you did, don't stay quiet. Share, subscribe, tell me you hear me. Because silence is their power. But your voice is your rescue.